The Good News according to St. Matthew, the 22nd chapter. Then the Pharisees went and plotted to entrap him in what he said. So they sent their disciples to him along with the Herodians, saying, "Teacher, we know that you are sincere and teach the way of God in accordance with truth and show deference to no one, for you do not regard people with partiality. Tell us then, what you think? Is it lawful to pay taxes to the emperor or not?" But Jesus, aware of their malice, said, "Why are you putting me to the test, you hypocrite? Show me the coin used for the tax." And they brought him a denarius. Then he said to them, "Whose head is this, and whose title?" They answered, "The emperor's." Then he said to them, "Give therefore to the emperor the things that are the emperor's, and to God the things that are God's." When they heard this, they were amazed, and they left him and went away. The good news of the Lord. This time from the New International Translation of the Koine Greek text, beginning at verse 15. Then the Pharisees went out and laid plans to trap him in his words. They sent their disciples to him along with the Herodians. "Teacher," they said, "we know that you are a man of integrity and that you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. You aren't swayed by others because you pay no attention to who they are." I want to put a tag on this text, and for a moment with your prayers, I want to talk about being truthful in a lying world. Being truthful in a lying world. An elderly couple who were childhood sweethearts and had settled down in their old neighborhood were celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary. They walked down the street to their old school. There, they held hands as they found the old desk they shared and where he had carved, "I love you, Sally." Yeah, they made them the last back then, and schools don't get rid of anything, you know that. On their way back home, an armored car drove by and a bag of money falls out of the armored car practically at their feet. Sally quickly picks it up, but they don't know what to do with it, so they take it home. There she counts the money, $50,000. The husband says, "We've got to give it back." And Sally says, "With your pension reduced and the loss that we've endured with our stocks, we're barely making it." "But it's not our money," the husband argued. We've always tried to do what's right. We need to do what's right now." "Not this time," she replied. "This time it's finders keepers." So she then puts the money back in the bag and hides it up in their attic. The next day, 2 FBI agents going door to door in the neighborhood looking for the money and show up at their home. They inquire of the couple, "Pardon me, but did either of you find any money that fell out of an armored car yesterday?" "No," Sally says. The husband says, "She's lying. She hid it up in the attic." "Don't believe him," she responds. "He's getting senile." The agents sit the man down and begin to question him. One says, "Tell us the story from the beginning." The old man says, "Well, when Sally and I were walking home from school yesterday, the FBI agent looks at his partner and says, 'Let's get out of here.'" Some of y'all will get that one later. That couple probably led an exemplary life, but when money got tight, the morals became blurry for the wife. Another more modern example of this, I don't know how many of you watch ABC's Scandal, but this week they had a storyline where the teenage first daughter is involved in a sex tape. When Olivia Pope figures out who the teenage boy is that filmed it, she meets with the parents, expecting them to understand and make sure all digital copies of the tape are erased. She's shocked when the parents, who talk about how messed up their son is, agree to remove all traces of the tape for $2.5 million. When she informs the president of this, he agrees to it to make sure it doesn't make it on the internet. It happens all too often. I know that was a fictitious story, but it happens all too often that we are swayed to believe the world's views of things. Our integrity is not bulletproof in the world today. In our gospel text for today, we see that Jesus had unwavering integrity. He was beyond any gray living. Now, I have to admit, I didn't realize how much our gospel text had to do with integrity, because I've always heard preachers use this as a stewardship piece. And I've preached one or two sermons that way as well. I really didn't want to use this text today, but I found myself being pushed back to this text. And so I decided to dive a little deeper into it and look at the Greek. There's one word that appears twice in the text, aletheis. The first time it appears in the NRSV translation, they translate it as sincere. You heard me read that the first time, which sincere is what the dictionary defines as free from pretense or deceit, proceeding from genuine feelings. I'm not too happy with that translation because this has nothing to do with feelings. The NIV translates it the first time as integrity, which is a little better. Integrity is defined as the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles, moral uprightness. The two translations use different words the first time that aletheis appears, but they use the same word the second time, truth. So let me give you the D.T. Powell translation of what the Pharisees say. Teacher, we know that you are truthful and teach God's way in truth. You don't care about other people's views because you're not swayed by how much influence they have. Sisters and brothers, as Christians, we need to live a life that would cause someone to say that you are not swayed by the money or power of others. In a world where lying is the norm, we need to unquestionably be people of the utmost integrity, of the utmost truthfulness. Don't miss the fact that these are Jesus' enemies talking about him being truthful. It's a high compliment. I don't know how many of our friends, much less our enemies, would say we have integrity. Yet the Pharisees say this about a man that they despise. But that was the type of life that Jesus led, where even his enemies, who were trying to get rid of him, had to acknowledge what type of person he was. In this world where people lie, cheat, and steal to get ahead, and that's just in elementary school, we need to live our lives as truthful followers of the way, not changing our opinion or answers based on how much money, power, or influence somebody else has. I'll tell you, I could preach on this for about 30 minutes easily, but since y'all won't go for that, let me give you two examples from the gospel on how to be more truthful in this lying world. First thing is, you have to be truthful about your money. It starts with realizing that the money you carry in your wallet or have in the bank doesn't really belong to you. It belongs to the U.S. government, which means it's a federal crime to mutilate or deface those bills. You don't believe me? Look up Title 18, Section 333 of the United States Code. You can't mess with the government's money. Now, if the money in your wallet were yours, you could do whatever you wanted to do with it. You could write on it, you could burn it, you could cut into little pieces, deface it in any way you wanted, if it were yours. But it's not yours. Mess with it and you could possibly be fined or imprisoned or both. The bill and coins may have different presidents on them, but all of them say United States of America. The money is simply on loan to us from the U.S. government. For the privilege to make, spend, and save money in this country, we have to pay taxes, or most of us do at least. I'm constantly surprised to hear about individuals and businesses that are charged with tax evasion. They aren't truthful about their money because they want more and more of it. Or they'll exploit loopholes in our bloated tax codes that allow them to move their address overseas, but keep the business here and pay no taxes. Many of those people and businesses claim to be Christians. And what's even more surprising is that every year there are hundreds of churches that run into problems with the IRS because they haven't been truthful. But Jesus says, give to the government what belongs to the government. And being truthful about your money involves more than your taxes. Jesus also said, give to God what God deserves. He's not talking about your offering, he's talking about your tithe. And I've said this before, those are two different things. You've got to remember that Jesus was a Jew. He taught from the Jewish scriptures, and he's speaking to the Pharisees who knew every jot and tittle of Jewish law. So when he says, give to God what belongs to God, they know he's talking about their tithe. Being truthful about our money means we recognize that the money belongs to the government, but ultimately all that we are and all that we have belongs entirely to God. All right, let me break that down for you. If God created the universe, then the money the government prints is on paper that came from trees that God created. All of creation belongs to God, even the money. And God said, a tithe of everything from the land, whether grain from the soil or fruit from the tree, belongs to the Lord. It is holy to me. It is holy to the Lord. It truly amazes me the number of people, including pastors and church leaders, who try to lie about tithing. Here are just a few of my favorites. Tithing is an Old Testament concept, and we are New Testament people. Wrong. Jesus said, don't think that I've come to abolish the law or the prophets. I've come not to abolish, but to fulfill. That means what God said in the Old Testament is still good for us today. And it still holds true now. We just see it through New Testament eyes. That means we don't see tithing just as treasures, but also as time and talents. Another one that people say, I tithe off my net income. I've heard pastors say this, not my gross. I'm sorry, but that's giving God the sloppy seconds. Proverbs 3 says, honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all your crops. So if you're giving off the net, many thanks for your offering. Just don't call it your tithe. And my favorite, what I give is between me and God. You're absolutely right. And I know for some of you, this is a hard message to hear because pastors have often been the ones to teach you those falsehoods about tithing. It does amaze me that our currency has "in God we trust" on it, but when it comes to giving to God a portion of what God has given us, we don't hand it over and trust God to take care of us. Okay, I kind of implied earlier this wasn't a stewardship sermon. And it's not. It may have some stewardship pieces in it, but it's not a stewardship sermon. It's a sermon about being truthful in a lying world. Being truthful about your money, knowing whose it is and what you're to do with it is just one part of it. One of the other parts that comes from our gospel text is being truthful when those around you are doing wrong. Since this summer, I've been working a lot with youth on the south side of Chicago. And one of the things that annoys me is that you can watch a youth do something. Y'all probably had this happen out here too. Confront them on it, and they'll immediately say, I didn't do anything. I didn't do that. Even children brought up in households where honesty is a priority will do that. It's like this first thing that comes out of their mouth instinctively. I've come to realize that it's because they see others do it and get away with it. I've also had a youth tell me, it's not wrong unless you get caught. And you might think that it's only youth that do it, but I've also watched and heard some adults, and I'm talking about people with good jobs and education, do the same thing. It's easy for them to slip into the lie when their butt is on the line. Jesus didn't, though. And that's who we're to emulate. Jesus didn't do that. Jesus had that chance. He could have said something strange or bizarre that really throw them off. The Pharisees came at him doing wrong. They were doing wrong. It says in the thing, they came to entrap him. They may have given him some nice high praises and talked all polite with him, but their attitude was all around a lie. They wanted to catch Jesus in a trap. All right, teacher, come on, tell us what it is. Is it should we as Jewish people be giving money to Caesar, paying Caesar taxes? Jesus could have gone off on them. Jesus could have gotten into their boat, but Jesus didn't. Jesus didn't allow them, their attitude, their behavior, to instruct what he did and said. Instead, Jesus says to them, you know, y'all are a bunch of liars. And let me tell you why. You're trying to get me. So let me show you, let me see some money. Yep, you see this money? All right. Give it to God, to Caesar what's Caesar, give to God what's God's. They weren't expecting that. When you don't allow people to bring you down, when you remain truthful in the midst of a lying world, people are always shocked by it. People don't know what to do with it. People will look at you as if you're crazy. But you need to know that that's the right way to be. You need to know that's the right thing to do. You need to know that that is the right approach to take with life. It's not easy. I know that. When you see everything slipping and sliding away, it's not easy to not fall into that trap. But as people who are trying to live with integrity, as people who are trying to follow the ways of Jesus, as people who are trying to be truthful in a lying world, we have to work harder and harder and harder not to fall into that trap. I told you I could preach for a while on this, so I'm going to close instead of continue to preach. And I'm going to close with this story. I heard this when I was in college, and it stuck with me ever since. Back in 1986, Cleveland Stroud had coached the Bulldogs of Rockdale County High School in Georgia for 18 years. Their 86-87 season was their championship season, 21 wins and 5 losses on the way to the Georgia State boys basketball tournament. Then a dramatic come-from-behind victory in the state finals. Stroud recalls that it was the perfect night when they won. He was carried around the gym on the shoulders of his triumphant players and their proud parents. A few weeks later, the trophy was placed in a new glass trophy case outside the school's gym. 2 months after the championship, during a routine grade check, Stroud discovered that one player had been academically ineligible to play. The player had only played during the first game of the regional qualifying tournament when he went in for the last 45 seconds of the game while Rockdale County was leading by 23 points. Stroud admitted that he struggled with what to do next, but his commitment to integrity, his commitment to the truth, led him to the right decision and so he informed the principal, who then informed the state association. Stroud said, "Winning is the most important thing for any coach, but your principles have to be higher than your goals." 3 weeks after he reported it, the state had come in and taken the trophy. The display case was empty. When the team lamented their loss in the locker room, he told them, "You've got to do what is honest, what is right, and what the rules say. People forget that the score of basketball games, but they don't ever forget what you are made of." As the football season continues and basketball gears up, I wish all coaches were like Coach Stroud, mindful of the lessons they're teaching our students in today's world. I wish all parents, teachers, politicians, and yes, even ministers were aware of the problems we reap when we don't stand for integrity, when we don't stand for the truth, when we try to sweep our sins and mistakes under the rug and pretend that it never happened. Jesus didn't do it. Jesus could have done it, but Jesus didn't do it, even though it led him to the cross. Sisters and brothers, whatever the struggles may be, whatever lies are being told around you or about you, it is important to always be truthful in the midst of a lying world. Amen.